The blue and red lights outside my kitchen window were flashing so hard they turned the walls purple. My son was sitting at my table. Not standing. Not arguing. Sitting. Hands locked together. Jaw clenched. Breathing shallow. And all I could think was this. You finally see me now. But that moment came much later. Long after the mistake was made. Long after they decided I was no longer the one in control. Before I tell you how my own family tried to take my home, my autonomy, and my voice, and how I quietly let the truth dismantle everything they built, I want to know something. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. And if you believe that underestimating someone who's survived decades of life, loss, and hard decisions is a dangerous mistake, go ahead and hit subscribe. Because this story isn't about age. It's about what happens when people mistake silence for weakness. My name is Evelyn Monroe. I was 67 years old when the world around me quietly decided I was no longer capable of deciding things for myself. It didn't happen all at once. That's the dangerous part. It crept in slowly, disguised as concern. It began on an ordinary afternoon in Asheville, North Carolina. The kind of afternoon that feels small while you're living it, and enormous once you understand what it set in motion. I was sitting in a cafe just off Lexington Avenue with my son Caleb and his wife Marissa. It was one of those places locals love because it doesn't try too hard. Exposed brick walls. Wooden tables scarred with years of coffee rings. Soft indie music humming low enough that no one had to talk over it. Sunlight poured in through tall windows and landed across our table like it had chosen us. Caleb was talking about work. He always talked about work now. Developments. Investments. Opportunities. Marissa was scrolling on her phone, nodding at the right moments without really listening. I was stirring my tea, watching the steam curl upward, thinking how peaceful it felt. That's when they both stood up to pay the bill. And that's when she appeared. I didn't hear her approach. One moment I was alone at the table. The next, there was a woman standing across from me. Early 50s. Dark hair pulled tight at the base of her neck. A long coat buttoned even though the cafe was warm. Her eyes locked onto mine. Not curious, not friendly, urgent. The kind of look that makes your stomach tighten before your brain catches up. She didn't ask to sit. She didn't smile. She placed a small green velvet box on the table, directly in front of me. "You'll need this tonight," she said. Her voice was calm. Controlled. "Answer the call. No matter what." Before I could speak, before I could ask who she was or why she was talking to me, she turned and walked out. Not rushed. Not panicked. Just gone. I sat there frozen, my hand still wrapped around my spoon. The box felt heavier just sitting there, like it carried weight beyond its size. I slipped it into my purse just as Caleb and Marissa returned. They didn't notice. They never did notice the quiet things. That evening my house felt different. Same walls. Same floors. Same kitchen where my husband Thomas and I had cooked thousands of meals together. But the air felt tight. Restless. Like it was waiting for something. I locked the door behind me and stood there for a moment longer than necessary, my purse hanging from my shoulder like an anchor. I didn't open the box right away. I made tea and forgot to drink it. Checked the locks twice. Sat down. Stood up. Sat again. The clock over the stove ticked louder than it ever had before. Finally, I placed the box on the kitchen table and opened it. Inside was a phone. I recognized it instantly. The worn black case. The small crack near the corner from the day Thomas dropped it fixing the porch light. My husband's phone. The same phone the sheriff told me was lost when his truck went off the mountain road. The same phone I'd held during sleepless nights just to feel close to him. Thomas Monroe had been declared dead 10 months earlier. And now his phone was sitting in my hands. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. Fully charged. The clock on the stove read 11:26 p.m. I laughed once, short, breathless, disbelieving. Then the phone rang. Not a modern ringtone. Thomas's old one. The song he refused to change because he said it reminded him of being young. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might drop the phone. Unknown caller. It rang again. I answered on the third ring. Hello, I said. My voice didn't sound like it belonged to me. There was breathing on the other end. Slow. Measured. Then the voice spoke. Evelyn. It was distorted. Filtered. But I knew the rhythm. The pauses. The way he always said my name like he was anchoring himself. Don't trust Caleb. Don't trust Marissa. And do not leave the land. My knees weakened. My free hand gripped the edge of the counter so hard my fingers ached. You're in danger, the voice continued. You have to stay put. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask his name, to beg. The line went dead. I stood there long after the call ended, the phone pressed to my ear, my heart racing, my mind refusing to accept what my body already knew. Thomas was gone, but somehow he had just warned me, and he had named the people closest to me as the danger. Before that night, I was just a widow trying to exist in a world that had quietly decided I was fragile. After the funeral, after the empty coffin was lowered into the ground, people stopped asking what I wanted. They started telling me what was best for me. My doctor spoke slower. Neighbors checked in more often. And my son began managing me. Caleb started stopping by without calling. Marissa reorganized my paperwork without asking. They talked about safety, about responsibility, about how much space I really needed at my age. You should think about simplifying, Marissa said once, smiling like kindness was a shield. Something smaller, easier. They never said the word burden, but it hovered in the room anyway. I learned to smile, to nod, to let them talk. Because when you push back too hard, people stop listening. And when you push back too late, people decide for you. The next morning, Caleb knocked on my door without calling. I recognized the rhythm immediately. Firm, careful, practiced. He was holding 2 coffees, expensive ones he never bought unless he wanted something. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one Thomas used to read the paper at every morning. Mom, Caleb said, wrapping his hands around the cup, we need to talk. Those words used to mean advice. Now they sounded like a verdict already written. He talked about winter storms, maintenance costs, property taxes. Everything he said made sense. On the surface. Then he mentioned selling. Not directly, just a suggestion. There are developers interested, he said. You'd be secure. Comfortable. Comfortable. Like comfort was the goal. I told him I wasn't selling. His jaw tightened for just a second. Marissa thinks you're holding on because of Dad, he added. She worries you're being emotional. That's when I felt it. Not anger. Not fear. Something colder. They weren't asking. They were preparing. And as I watched my son explain my own life to me, I realized something terrifying. They had already decided I was no longer the authority in my own story. And they believed I was too weak to notice. The days after the call blurred together, but the feeling didn't fade. It sharpened. Every sound in the house felt louder. Every knock at the door felt intentional. Every conversation carried weight beneath the words. I didn't tell Caleb about the phone. I didn't tell Marissa either. Not because I trusted them, but because something in my bones told me silence was safer. For now, Caleb started coming by more often. Not checking in. Monitoring. He walked through the house like he was measuring it with his eyes, pausing at doorways, opening cabinets he already knew were empty, asking casual questions that weren't casual at all. Did you sleep okay? Did you remember to take your meds? Have you thought any more about selling? Marissa followed up with emails, articles about downsizing, links about assisted living communities framed like lifestyle upgrades. One afternoon, she forwarded me a document titled, Future Planning Options. Guardianship was listed under a section called Support Systems. That was the moment my stomach dropped, because that word doesn't come up by accident. It's introduced, planted, prepared. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated slowly, its shadow dragging across the room like a second hand measuring out time I didn't have. Thomas's voice replayed in my mind. Do not leave the land. Why? What was so important about this place that it cost him his life? And why did my own son want me gone so badly? I started searching quietly. Not online. Not where someone could track me. I went into Thomas's old workshop behind the house. The one place Caleb rarely stepped into. He always said it smelled like oil and old man habits. To me it smelled like truth. I opened drawers that hadn't been touched since Thomas died. Dug through folders labeled in his careful handwriting. At first everything looked ordinary. Receipts. Manuals. Property tax records. Then I noticed what didn't belong. An envelope tucked inside a folder marked Utilities. Inside was a receipt from a law firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Criminal defense. High-level consultation. Dated almost 2 years before Thomas's death. My heart began to pound. Thomas and I didn't keep secrets. At least, I thought we didn't. I pulled out our old shared laptop, the one we used for bills and travel confirmations. I typed in the email address we'd used for decades and started searching keywords. Survey. Boundary. Assessment. The results populated slowly, like the computer itself was hesitant to reveal them. Emails about land surveys. Messages discussing underground access points. Coordinates. And one short exchange that made my hands go cold. Preliminary assessment confirmed significant potential. Buyer willing to proceed discreetly. The date was 3 weeks before Thomas's death. He wasn't planning to sell. He was investigating something. Something valuable. Something dangerous. The realization hit me all at once. Thomas hadn't been distant near the end. He'd been careful. The late nights in the barn. The unexplained cash withdrawals. The way he'd stopped talking openly on the phone. He wasn't hiding things from me because he didn't trust me. He was protecting me. And now whatever he had discovered hadn't died with him. It had just changed targets. The barn light was already on when I walked out there that night. That should have stopped me. It didn't. I stepped inside and smelled the familiar mix of dust and oil, and something else. Anticipation. A woman stood near Thomas's old workbench. Mid-40s. Blonde hair pulled back. Calm posture. She didn't flinch when she saw me. "My name is Agent Hannah Price," she said. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." I didn't answer. Didn't move. Didn't invite her to continue. She spoke anyway. "Your husband contacted us nearly 2 years ago," she said gently. "He discovered something on this property that didn't belong here." She paused, letting the words settle. "There's a cave system beneath your land," she continued. "Old. Natural. Easy to hide." My chest tightened. She swallowed once before going on. "Your son found it first." The words felt unreal. Detached from reality. Like she was talking about someone else's life. "Caleb allowed the space to be used for storage and transfers," she said. "Illegal operations. Organized. Profitable." I shook my head slowly. "No," I whispered. "You're wrong." She met my eyes. "I wish I was." She told me everything. How it started small. Money. Promises. Pressure. How Thomas discovered it. How he confronted Caleb privately and gave him time to stop. Time to fix it. Time to choose differently. Caleb didn't. Thomas came to the FBI when he realized his own son wouldn't walk away. He cooperated quietly. Documented everything. Agreed to let the operation continue under surveillance until they had enough evidence to dismantle it completely. Agent Price's voice dropped. "They forced his truck off the road," she said. "Made it look like an accident. The local investigation was compromised." I felt something inside me give way. Not explosively. Just a slow, devastating collapse. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Because they're running out of time," she said. "And so are you." She explained that Caleb and Marissa needed me off the land. If I left, they could destroy whatever Thomas hid. If I stayed, I was a liability. "Your husband believed you'd know what to do when the truth found you," she added. I looked around the barn. At the life Thomas and I built with our hands. And for the first time since his death, I wasn't afraid. I was focused. Thomas hadn't left instructions the way movies make men do. No letter taped under a drawer. No map with an X. Just one sentence Agent Price repeated quietly. He said you'd recognize the place. That night I walked the property alone. Past the fence Thomas repaired every spring. Past the oak tree where Caleb carved his initials at 12 years old. Along the path Thomas and I walked after dinner when we needed to talk without walls listening. Then I stopped. Behind the house. Near the hydrangea bush we planted the year my mother died. Thomas joked the hole was deep enough to hide anything important. At the time I'd laughed. I knelt and dug with my bare hands. The soil was cold. Packed tight. My fingers ached. Then I felt it. Plastic. Solid. I pulled until the container came free. Heavy. Sealed. Footsteps crunched behind me. Mom. Caleb's voice. Sharp. Too close. I stood slowly, clutching the container to my chest. For a split second I saw the boy he used to be. Then I saw the man he'd become. I ran. Flashlights swept across the yard. A car engine roared. Headlights flared. A woman leaned out the passenger window. Get in. Now. Agent Price. Inside the container were documents. A flash drive. And a folded note in Thomas's handwriting. The truth is buried not to stay hidden, but until you're ready to carry it. I didn't go to the police. I didn't confront Caleb. I didn't warn Marissa. Instead, I did exactly what they expected. I became quiet. I missed calls. Delayed decisions. Let my voice shake. Just enough. I told Marissa I was overwhelmed. Told Caleb I needed time. I let them believe the pressure was working. And just like that, they relaxed. People who believe they're in control always do. Marissa started talking more freely. Timelines. Attorneys. What would happen if things got difficult? Caleb stopped pretending this was about my safety. He talked about deadlines. About money. About how much easier everything would be once I was gone. They talked in my kitchen like I wasn't really there. Like I was furniture. What they didn't know was that Agent Price and a small federal task force were listening. Watching. Tracking. Building a case that didn't rely on panic. All I had to do was wait. Revenge doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like letting people think they've already won. And by the time they realized who I really was, it would be too late. The night everything ended was quieter than I expected. No thunder. No dramatic music swelling in the background. Just the steady hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick of the clock above the sink. Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table. Not pacing. Not arguing. Sitting. His hands were clasped together so tightly the skin across his knuckles had turned white. Marissa stood by the counter, phone in hand, scrolling through something she'd already read 3 times. She looked composed, too composed. The kind of calm people where when they believe control is still within reach. I placed the teapot on the table and poured myself a cup. My hands didn't shake. That was how I knew I was ready. They had asked for this meeting. Not formally. Just a suggestion over dinner the night before. Let's talk about next steps, Marissa had said, her voice gentle. No pressure. Just clarity. Clarity. That word again. They believed I'd finally folded. That the missed calls, the delayed paperwork, the tired voice had done their work for them. They were wrong. We sat there for several minutes in silence. Caleb cleared his throat. So, he said carefully, have you thought any more about the offer? I looked at him. Really looked. The familiar slope of his shoulders. The scar near his eyebrow from when he fell off his bike at 9 years old. The same eyes Thomas used to joke came straight from his mother. My son. And yet not the boy I raised. I have, I said. Marissa straightened slightly. Caleb leaned forward. And, he asked. I took a slow sip of tea. I've decided to stay. The air in the room shifted. Just slightly. Like a pressure change before a storm. Caleb's jaw tightened. Marissa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Mom, Caleb said, forcing a chuckle. We've been over this. It's not about what you want anymore. It's about what's practical. There it was. Not about what you want anymore. I set my cup down. I disagree. Marissa stepped in smoothly. We're just trying to help, she said. This situation could get complicated. Legal. Stressful. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it, then froze. There was a knock at the door. 3 firm raps. Professional. Controlled. Caleb's eyes flicked toward me. What's that? He asked. I didn't answer. The knock came again. This time louder. Marissa's phone buzzed again. Her face drained of color. I'll get it, Caleb said, standing too quickly. He barely reached the door before it opened. Men and women stepped inside, badges visible, voices calm and authoritative. Caleb Monroe, one of them said. We have a warrant for your arrest. Time did something strange then. It didn't slow down. It sharpened. Every sound became precise. The click of handcuffs. The soft gasp Marissa tried to hide. The scrape of a chair against the floor. Caleb turned toward me. Really turned. And for the first time in months, he didn't look at me like an obstacle or a problem to be managed. He looked at me like a mother. Mom, he said quietly. I never meant for it to go this far. I stood. My legs felt steady beneath me. You made a choice, I said. And so did I. Marissa tried to speak. She always did. Tried to negotiate. To explain. To control the narrative. This is a misunderstanding, she said quickly. We have rights. You can't just. No one's interested in explanations tonight, the agent replied calmly. Her phone was taken from her hand. Her shoulders slumped as if the weight of her certainty had finally been lifted. As Caleb was led toward the door, he stopped. Turned back one last time. Why? He asked. Not angry. Just hollow. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. Didn't list his sins. I trusted you, I said simply. And you used that trust like a tool. That was all. He nodded once. Then followed them out. The door closed behind them with a sound that felt final in a way nothing else ever had. The house fell silent again. Different silence this time. Not heavy. Clear. I sat back down at the table and placed my hands flat against the wood. The same table Thomas and I had argued over. Laughed around. Planned our lives on. It felt solid beneath my palms. Grounding. An agent stepped forward. Mrs. Monroe, she said. We'll need a few statements over the next few days. But for tonight you're safe. Safe. I hadn't realized how long it had been since that word applied to me. After they left, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I made another cup of tea and sat at the table until the sky outside the window began to change color. When morning light finally crept in, touching the edges of the room, I felt something I hadn't felt since Thomas died. Relief. Not happiness. Not triumph. Relief. The weeks that followed were quieter. People asked questions. Neighbors whispered. News vans parked at the end of the driveway for a while before losing interest. Caleb's name appeared in places I never imagined it would. Federal charges. Conspiracy. Accessory to murder. Marissa took a plea deal. I attended no court hearings. I didn't need to see it. I already knew how it would end. Agent Price came by one afternoon with updates. They dismantled the operation beneath the land. Sealed the caves. Removed everything that didn't belong. She handed me back the flash drive. You don't need this anymore, she said. I smiled faintly. No, I agreed. I don't. We stood outside together, looking out over the property. The land Thomas loved. The land that had nearly cost me everything. I'm sorry, she said quietly. About your son. I nodded. So am I. Both things were true. I kept the house. Not because it was valuable. Not because it was stubbornness. But because it was honest. Every board. Every nail. Every tree held a memory I wasn't willing to surrender. I rebuilt slowly. On my terms. I learned something important at 67. Strength doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't rush. It waits. It watches. And when the moment comes, it acts without hesitation. People asked me how I felt. Angry, vindicated, broken, strong. The truth was simpler than that. I felt awake. I learned that love doesn't excuse harm. That family doesn't mean silence. And that protecting yourself, even from your own blood, is not betrayal. It's survival. Thomas once told me the hardest kind of bravery is quiet. The kind no one applauds. The kind that simply keeps going. He was right. And I think somewhere, he knew I'd remember that when it mattered most. If this story gave you chills, go ahead and hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever witnessed? And if you believe it's never too late to reclaim your voice, your boundaries, and your power, subscribe for more stories like this, because quiet strength deserves to be heard.